If you were born in Salt Lake City, there's a greater than 50% chance you're Mormon. From a small town in Alabama, you're likely evangelical. From Rhode Island, Catholic.
We like to think our faith is a result of a deep, soul-searching quest for truth, but the data suggests something much more mundane. Your religion is mostly a zip code accident. By the end of this video, we're going to look at the maps to prove that your spiritual identity might just be a byproduct of your upbringing, and why realizing that is the most hopeful thing that can happen to your faith.
Today, we're breaking down the geography of belief in the U.S. because once you see the borders, you'll start to wonder what's actually on the other side.
Welcome to the Altarless Traveler, a space for the spiritually curious, the questioners, and the deconstructors. Look at the Catholics. Catholics embrace many beautiful rituals, though in these regions, it's often less of a spiritual aha moment and more of a cultural reflex you inherited with your zip code. They own the edges and the old industrial heart. You see deep clusters along the Mexican border. That's centuries of Hispanic heritage. You see the Northeast cities, the legacy of Irish and Italian immigrants. And then there's the Midwest, Catholic strongholds, not because of a sudden apparition, but because of 19th century German and Polish migration wave. In these places, being Catholic isn't a choice, it's a family inheritance. Switch to the evangelicals. This is the Bible Belt, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, where the air itself feels Protestant. In parts of the South, over 75% of the population identifies as some form of evangelical. Is it more likely that God has a specific burning passion for the suburbs of Nashville, or that humans are just social creatures who want to fit in with their neighbors? If you're born in the South, choosing Jesus often just means agreeing with everyone at the grocery store. Then you have the mainline Protestants, the Methodists, the Lutherans. They anchor the frost belt of the upper Midwest. If you're in Minnesota or the Dakotas, you're likely Lutheran because your great-grandparents brought those hymns from Scandinavia.
And it's not just the big denominations. This zip code accident gets even more specific as the groups get smaller.
Take historically black Protestantism. If you're born into this tradition, there's a 59% chance your truth is rooted in the American South. In states like Mississippi, that faith isn't just a choice, it's the cultural oxygen. If you're Jewish, there's a nearly 50% chance you live in the Northeast. If you're Muslim or Hindu, you're statistically anchored to tech and pharma hubs in New Jersey or Michigan. If you're Buddhist, you're likely in Hawaii, the only state where a non-Abrahamic faith is a massive outlier. And we can't forget the Mormon corridor, where Utah and Idaho create a religiously distinct desert oasis. Whether you're a Jehovah's Witness in a rural town or an Orthodox Greek in Chicago, the map still holds the cards. You didn't choose your truth, you inherited your neighborhood. This isn't just an American quirk. In Paraguay, nearly 90% of people are Catholic. In Thailand, 94% are Buddhist. In Iran, 99% are Muslim. If you swapped a baby from a Lutheran crib in Fargo with a baby from a Muslim home in Tehran, their eternal truths would swap too.
When you see this, the one true way starts to look like the way my neighborhood does things.
But here's where it gets interesting. The nuns, those who do not subscribe to any organized religion.
Now, nuns isn't just one thing. It's a massive, messy umbrella. You have atheists, agnostics, the spiritual but not religious, the nothing in particular. And we could spend an entire video breaking down the differences, and we probably will sometime in the future.
But for today, look at the pattern. While religions have belts and hubs, peaks where they dominate and valleys where they nearly vanish, the desire for no label is more like sea level. It's remarkably consistent. There is no none-free zone in America. Whether you're in the Bayou or the Bay Area, the baseline of people looking for meaning outside the institution is rising everywhere at once.
For a long time, We thought of religious identity like a regional accent, something you were just born into depending on your zip code. But today, the data shows we're in the middle of a great decoupling.
Just check out the growth of the non-religious. From Oregon's 43% to Texas doubling at 26%, the tide is rising everywhere. Nationally, we've jumped from 16 to 29%, proving that when it comes to meaning, geography is no longer destiny.
I grew up in a small town in Texas.
This was the sandbox for my soul. On a street like this, you didn't exactly choose a worldview. You inherited it like a lawn or a last name. Faith was tied to Friday night football, where the opening prayer felt just as foundational to the game as the kickoff. It was a geography where your neighbors didn't just know your name, they knew exactly which pew you occupied on Sunday morning. In that landscape, God had a very specific accent. He spoke through traditional hymns and a very specific set of political assumptions. It's a fusion that still defines the region. Even today, nearly 70% of white evangelicals in the South say their religious and political identities are completely inseparable. For a long time, I didn't know you could have one without the other. Then I moved to Kuwait with Muslims, to Cyprus with Orthodox, to Thailand with Buddhists, Israel with Jews, Bali with Hindus, Jamaica with the evangelicals and Rastafarians, and eventually here to South Korea, a place where a majority have no religion, a majority of nuns.
But it was inside a temple in New Delhi, India, that blew me away.
I was standing on a sidewalk that felt like a sensory assault. Exhaust fumes, the smell of street food, and the heartbreaking sight of kids sitting on the pavement in the middle of chaos. Then we saw it, a temple that looked like nothing I'd ever seen in Texas. It had this strange roof covered in deities, with Ganesha, the elephant-headed god, sitting right on top. To my Western eyes, it looked alien, but as I watched men pause their busy lives to genuflect and ring a bell before stepping inside, I realized, to them, this wasn't strange. This was just Tuesday. We walked inside and it was a different world. There was a priest tossing objects onto an altar before a god with a tiny head. I watched a woman ring the entrance bell and exit with a look of peace. The priest, or pujari, was using all the elements, fire, earth, and water. People were waving incense into their faces and drinking a milky substance from their cupped hands like it was the most natural thing in the world. Statistics tell us that 94% of the world's Hindus live in India. If you were born there, the sound of these bells isn't noise, it's the sound of home. For a kid from the Bible Belt, seeing a cobra and what looked like a Christmas creche is a lot. It's hard to wrap your head around. But then I looked back out on the street at the beggars, the mothers, the heat, and I realized if I had been born in one of those houses across the street, I wouldn't be filming this with a look of curiosity.
I would be the one ringing that bell. I would be the one drinking that milk. I would be the one finding my only source of hope in a God with an elephant's head. Moving across the globe helped me move away from my religious defaults. I realized my faith wasn't a universal truth. It was a souvenir of my upbringing. I realized that most people's faith was a byproduct of their zip code. Standing there, the strangeness of that temple started to evaporate.
I realized that the priest's holy milk was just my childhood communion in a different cup. The bells, the incense, the bowing, it was the same human impulse, just wearing a different cultural costume. If the vast majority of us simply inherit the truth of our parents, it means we aren't choosing a theology, we're just adopting a tribe. Once you see that, the walls between us and them start to feel a lot less like divine architecture and a lot more like simple property lines. If you are wandering without a map, you are not alone. I promise you are not alone. We're simply discovering that the truth is far too expansive to be contained by a single set of coordinates.
Maybe the point of faith isn't to defend the borders where you were born. Maybe it's to realize that the divine, whatever that is, doesn't need a passport. Please like and subscribe and drop a comment. I'd love to hear from fellow wanderers. What was the zip code accident of your upbringing? Thank you, and keep the faith.